Hello, and welcome to the podcast that knows, despite the push notifications we get all day telling us that the world is burning down around us, there is still good being created in the world, and we want to highlight it. Whether it's nonprofit leaders solving the world's biggest problems or a small business owner trying to make the world better with a great product or service, we want to highlight the ideas and strategies behind the good that's being made. So without further ado, you're listening to Creating Good, a podcast by Rogue Creatives hosted by me, Matt Barnes. Let's go! Hello.
Yo,
my gosh.
I'm Tiffany Pope, and you want to hear this flow into...
Flow does not rhyme with Pope. What is happening?
Kind of like Pope, flow. No, you're right.
No,
You're
not
right.
at all. Not even a little bit. What is
Okay, fine.
Oh
Okay,
my gosh.
just trying to have my fame here, you know?
Your fame?
That was my one-hit wonder, actually.
It was not a hit.
Yeah, it was a hit.
It's a wonder that you did that. Welcome to Creating Good. I'm Matt Barnes.
And I'm Tiffany.
She raps now, apparently.
I do.
We'll have an intervention later.
I rap and I don't know how to act now. Ooh,
Unacceptable.
I rap and I don't know how to act.
What? What's about? What is exciting about that? That was terrible. That doesn't rhyme. It doesn't.
You know, I appreciate your honesty.
I
mean, when are
You
you-
can always count on me for that.
Oh.
That is one thing I'm here for.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So welcome to Nonprofit not Nonprofit Connect.
Look at
Creating
me.
Good. See, you've
Now you're-
distracted me, and wow.
You're going back to your old ways.
Back to my old ways. No, this is Creating Good because
This
that's
is
what we're
creating
doing
good.
now.
Exactly. We're moving on.
We started a movement.
We did.
Yes, and
I mean, technically, I didn't. You did.
no,
But I like to say we did.
you didn't even come to the kickoff party.
But I was okay.
Okay.
I had class. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Don't. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from you. I'm getting my education.
Anyway, we kicked off Creating Good a couple weeks ago now, and man, it's exciting. People are getting involved, and you, listener, can get involved because we have our Creating Good pledge that we are trying to get 50,000 people in the first year to take by our National Day of Creating Good next October 16th. We've declared National Day of Creating Good.
So good.
And so we're trying to get 50,000 people to take this pledge. And it's a simple pledge. You can go to creatinggood.co/pledge and take it, and you get a little digital badge you can put on your website or show on your social media and spread it. We want more people because it's just about creating good in the world and getting people to do that.
Love it.
Yeah.
You have great ideas.
Well, thank you. Whoa,
I know, that was
compliment.
nice.
I don't
Okay.
even know what to do with that.
Yeah, me either.
Now-
Let's move on.
Okay.
Please, let's move on.
Oh my gosh. So this morning, you were at my house helping with the children's, and I walked downstairs, and you said, "Tomorrow I'm joining the dark side." And I said, "What does that mean?" And you said, "Use the context clues, figure it out." And so I said, "Are you watching Star Wars for the first time?" And then you said,
I'm going back to Brown tomorrow.
No, you said you got to that, but first you said, "Oh yeah, I guess I didn't give you any."
Oh yeah,
context clues."
I did say that.
You set me
That
up.
would have been nice. That would have been nice.
First up, the only context you gave me was Dark Side, which is a clear Star Wars
Yeah.
reference.
And then I've never seen Star Wars. So.
Okay, so this will be Tiffany's last recording with us today.
Oh, it's been a good one.
Wow! And last week, you got replaced by a new co-host potential,
I did.
Mr. Wells. He kind of knocked it out of the park.
He did. I
thought he did
actually think he
excellent.
did better than me.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I
I-
said it. So
he was
I
he
approve.
was pretty impressive.
I approve. He was great.
He was wishy-washy on whether he was going to do it or not up until the moment I hit record.
Aww.
He was like, I want to do it, and then he was like, no, I don't want to do it, and then he was like, I want to do it. No, I don't want to do it. It just you know Wells.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was fun. But today we have another guest on the podcast.
We do. Yes,
that was
we
a
do.
great transition. I
That
thought
was
I
so
just handled
good.
that really well.
You did.
Her name is Rachel Perić. She is the executive director of Welcoming America, which just sounds so hospitable.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
Yeah.
Welcoming
Welcoming.
America.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, they are a nonprofit leading the way in building inclusive communities where everyone feels they belong. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like that is needed.
Yes.
These days.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not a lot of inclusivity with communities and feeling like everybody belongs. It feels very divisive. So I'm excited about anybody who's out there trying to build bridges instead of
She's just out here trying to
put up
create some
walls.
good. She's out here trying to create some good.
There you go. So we had a great conversation. She's doing some really awesome work and really just creating more good in the world.
Absolutely.
Which is what we're all about.
We're all about that. Let's
all
go.
about that good.
All about that good. Wait, there's a song.
There's all about that bass.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
wrong
not
song.
Not,
wrong song.
Not really applicable here.
No song.
No.
Yeah.
All right. All right, Rachel Perić, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we jump into everything, we always start with a segment called 3 Random Questions. I got a list of many, many random questions, and we randomly choose 3. You ready?
They're very random. Yes.
Well, I'll do my best. I'll do my best. All right. Question number 1. What is your coffee order?
Oh, coffee order. I like just a basic drip coffee with some oat milk.
Okay, there you go. I think that's my wife's order actually. What
I like her already.
All right. She's got the oat milk for sure. What is one bucket list item you haven't accomplished and one that you have?
Oh, bucket list items. Well, I love to travel. And I got to do a bucket list trip last week. I got to go to Paris, which was
nice,
really fun. And I'm hoping I get to go to New Zealand someday. It sounds like a beautiful place, and they're doing some amazing welcoming work there too.
Yeah, that's one I would love to visit. I've never been to Australia or New Zealand, and I'd love to get over to that side of the globe. Last question. What is one thing you look forward to every day?
One thing that I look forward to every day is just getting to connect with my daughters. I have 2 daughters who are 7.5 and 5, and they're just a lot of fun.
That's so great. Kids are the best. I've got kids that are about to turn 7, and then ones that are 5 as well.
Oh wow!
And
Nice.
it's great age, right? They're just so fun and full of questions and thoughts and craziness.
They have all the questions, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of questions, smooth transition. Let's get into who you are and what you're about. To give us your origin story. Where did you come from? How did you get to where you are?
So I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and a big part of my origin story is that my grandparents on my mother's side came to the United States as refugees in the late 1940s. Both of them were Holocaust survivors who, really lost everyone that they loved in the world to where hate and intolerance can take a society. And I grew up with their stories. And I think, that really set me on this quest to see how we could build a different kind of world where that kind of thing couldn't happen. And also where, other families who immigrated to the U.S., like my own, could feel at home. And that ultimately led me to Welcoming America about 13 years ago.
And was that your first sort of foray into the nonprofit world?
Well, my actual first foray into the nonprofit world, having grown up in, the DC area, everything here is about, the sort of vision of service and government. And when I was about probably my older daughter's age, 7 or 8, I passed out little membership cards to this like pretend nonprofit organization to support blind animals. Cause that was just,
That's amazing.
It's like who you are.
I love it. That's so great.
Yeah. So I think it was always in my blood. And I kind of went this route of working in international development and then community development. I ran our United Way campaign here.
Oh, nice.
And then got more involved working with our immigrant community.
That's fantastic. Really quickly, though, how much funding were you able to raise for the blind animals? Was that a successful campaign for you?
I was able to raise $0, but there
Okay.
were some really nifty membership cards that may
Oh,
or
that's
may
good.
not have an animal on them.
Well, that's good. I'm glad there was some integrity there. At least you weren't taking people's money for it.
Absolutely. It's all about community, you know?
Awesome. Well, tell me about Welcoming America and what you're all about.
Well, we are ultimately also all about community. And our tagline here is building a nation of neighbors. And I really think that at the core, it's about trying to create communities where all of us, whether we have just arrived or have been here for generations, really can be neighbors in the deepest sense of that word. And I think, in this moment where a lot of us are feeling the loss of trust and connection, especially here in the US, it's about rebuilding that and trying to do it in a deliberate way to make sure, especially for people who may have just arrived or who have an immigrant background, that they are able to belong, just as all of us would want to belong in a community. And some of that is about supportive policies that reduce barriers for people. And some of it is about just connecting people across lines of difference in communities to make it feel like home for everyone.
So I guess I'm wondering why you chose such an easy problem to tackle. I mean, obviously this is not a huge thing. No, I mean, holy moly, where do you even begin with that? That's crazy. Like, especially today. I mean, I don't think anybody would disagree. It's a very divided world we live in, and yeah. What practically, I guess, does that look like?
Yeah, well, I guess, to your first question, like why try to tackle probably the most challenging thing about being human, right? Is like how we manage
Right.
difference and um but I think that's what makes it such an appealing problem to run toward instead of away from, because I think all around us we see what happens when we don't try to tackle that problem. And so, for Welcoming America, I think the power of what we see every day is a lot of people in communities actively running toward trying to solve those problems. And, we know it's not easy or simple, but over 15 years of doing this work, what we've seen are many leaders in communities who have run toward that challenge, and have really helped their communities navigate, this issue that is so polarized. But yet at a community level, I think there is, a lot of will to just try to figure out how to incorporate new people, figure out how to, make it easier for people to find a job or open a business or get involved in their kids' education in the community. And when you break down immigration into, what it actually looks like in communities to be welcoming, most people, um, we found, are really excited to do that work and to be part of it.
Is that so? I mean, that seems a little bit surprising to me, just based on what we hear all the time. You know what I mean? So do you feel that what I kind of hope is true sometimes, that it's more of a louder minority that is just maybe louder, but that is taking up a lot of the air in the room, or what, and that people actually really want these positive kind of things to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us see that there's this, dominant media narrative, which is all about really, fear and scarcity. There's not
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, yeah.
They are coming. And I think, a lot of that's also being fed by our politics. But again, at a community level, I think most people, even people who maybe have um, differing opinions about what the best immigration policy is, or differing opinions about, um, how to create a good community for people. Most people, I think, understand how important it is, for themselves to belong and what that means when you're accepted in a place. Um, and I think, when it's somebody that you see as your neighbor and it's a human who's next to you, it's very different than this like abstract idea that you might read about in the newspaper. So that's, I think, where we're trying to kind of bring people back to our better angels. And, when people actually encounter each other in community and start to, form a relationship, get to know each other, I think it's a lot harder to dehumanize the other person. And, that is like when you unpack everything else is really kind of at the center of it. Who do we see as a deserving person? Who do we see as deserving, to be able to make a better life for themselves? And I think we have enough for that to apply to everyone. So that's sort of the concept. And then, at a very practical level, I think what communities are also really well positioned to do is to, um, break that down into some very specific steps. So we use something called the welcoming standard, which says, here are some very practical things that your community can do to, um, make it easier for people whose first language isn't English to be able to access services. And here's what your local government can do to make sure that information is getting translated and interpreted. And so, during COVID, for example, that was really instrumental in making sure that a lot of people had access to information about vaccines and good public health. And that's, makes the community work better for everyone.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So on a real practical level, how do you do it? Like, what is it? Are you partnering with local communities? Is it leading more like larger initiatives to kind of inspire people toward that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So there's three kind of core things that Welcoming America does. So first of all, we're a network. So we have membership across most of the United States of both local governments and nonprofit organizations or coalitions who are really doing the work in community. And we support them through this network to do it well and, in partnership with others and learn best practices, that sort of thing. We also run a certification program. So that standard that I mentioned, we use to help communities meet the standard. And then we go in and certify them by doing an audit of their policies and practices. And if they're successful, they can use that seal of certification to, show to their community and also show to businesses or people that might want to visit their community that they are a welcoming place. And then we run some campaigns, including one called Welcoming Week, which happens in the middle part of September and is really an invitation to people in communities here in the US, but also around the world, to lift up these values and show, how communities can really come together and thrive.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm so fascinated. You've like, I made the joke, but you have taken on one of the most politicized, difficult, core problems, and to see, I've tell people all the time, like this podcast we started to help people in nonprofit world kind of connect with each other and learn from each other and all of that, which is great, and it's still, the core of it. But for me, it's also become this weekly reminder that there are people doing good in the world. A bit of encouragement.
I love that. Yeah.
A bit of encouragement for me of, I've got young kids just like you, and to kind of have that hope and excitement that there's good. But as I'm trying to encourage other people as well, for you to and your organization to tackle this head on is inspiring. That it wouldn't be a, oh man, that's too big, or got to leave that to hope some politician comes along that decides not to, just jump in line with everybody else, but actually do something big, but to actually stand up and kind of do this, and to continue doing it during a time when we're perhaps more divided than ever, is inspiring. Is the second thing you had talked about there, as far as the certification process that you guys offer. If a community wants to meet that or does not currently meet that but would like to, how do you help them come along in that?
Well, I think let me back up. I really appreciate your focus on the hopeful stories. I think we need that. I mean, there are hard things happening in the world and we shouldn't paint over them.
Yeah.
But I don't think nihilism gets us very far. And
Right.
I think we owe our kids and the next generation, the ability to to hold up the possibility that there's a better future, and also to paint a picture of what that future looks like. Because what's happening right now is there are a lot of forces not only painting a very grim vision of what the future looks like, but also telling us that we should be afraid of it, and specifically be afraid of it because somebody else is going to ruin it.
Yeah, exactly.
And throw in whoever that other is, an immigrant, or maybe it's like boomers have destroyed it. There's always an other, right?
There's always another. Yeah.
There's always another. So I think we have to, be really forceful in, holding up that hope, but also showing what the future can look like, and how, the fact that we are a multiracial democracy is a strength, that diversity is a strength. And, the world is not going to fall apart because of it. It's actually going to be better. And that's really what, welcoming communities, I think, have shown.
Right.
We've never been through a transition like this as a nation, but many communities have. And they've really prospered economically, socially, civically because of that. So that keeps me going.
Yeah.
And then, for communities that want to work toward that vision and become certified, our network is really a place to see, how other communities have gone through that process, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and, to do that, with research and, evidence-based practices in our back pockets.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So one of the topics I think that comes up a lot as I'm talking with nonprofit leaders or just people trying to do good in the world, is that because more than ever, a lot of the topics that nonprofits are trying to address have been so heavily politicized, and most of the time unnecessarily so. Dealing with things like homelessness or whatever the topic might be, immigration. And somehow politicians have grabbed onto this and, really come up with talking points to make it a political issue when it really shouldn't be. How does, you grew up in the heart there of DC with all the politics and all the things going on. And obviously the political process can be an amazing tool, but it can also be just the worst. So how have you approached that? Are you working with politicians? Have you just decided to bypass that completely? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, we are becoming more polarized, and also us being so polarized is itself a narrative.
Sure.
But I think what a lot of Americans are feeling is, really that pull away from each other. And also, yeah, like when you said you grew up in the DC area, I was like, don't judge me, don't judge me for my oat milk, But like, don't we all kind of feel that way? Like, don't judge me, right? Don't put me in a box.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the research around how you depolarize is about helping people really see our places of commonality. So not to diminish the ways in which we're different. I think those need to be celebrated, but also to see, the identities that we share in common. Like we may both like sports, we may both root for the same team, but we can come from different backgrounds and do that. And, politics is drawing a lot of energy off of, separating people, divide and conquer, making people feel like they're in different boxes. And I think so much of the work is about trying to reach beyond that, to show how there are a lot of spaces for democratic processes and decision making where we can come at it not just through the lens of politics, but just as a community. So a lot of our focus is around, finding those civic spaces. And some of them are, local boards and commissions. Maybe it's PTAs. Maybe it's people making a decision about how to design a park in their community, but really using those spaces to show and create a kind of even playing field so that people can do what makes democracy work best, which is make decisions together and be part of the process. At some point, politics are definitely part of it, and we do work with elected officials, especially at the local level. But I think I just want to draw our attention away from kind of the nastiness that feels like it's defining Washington back to our own communities and the places where we can really, I think, influence right now to be less polarized and more productive for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking recently with David McNair, who's the executive director of global policy for the One campaign. And he was talking about kind of the same thing because, when all of the One campaign and their work started, it was people like Bono going to people like Jesse Helms, who were, the exact opposite politically and all of that. And saying, like, if we can find the one thing that we agree on, leave the other stuff aside. Let's just focus on this one thing that we agree on. We need to deal with this problem, and it worked. And I I was asking him, I'm like, it doesn't seem like that works anymore. And he was saying, no, they a lot of times won't even take your calls, and they don't. It's so like if it doesn't fit into the Democrat or Republican narrative, we're not going to talk about it. And so the shift has been to local communities and kind of the grassroots of it and letting that come up and affect politics instead of the top down approach from the past. Because if you use the political buzzwords and all of that stuff, people immediately start taking sides. But if you talk about the actual concepts, the issues, the people, suddenly it's like, well, yeah, I want to help people. Yeah, people need to be treated well. Okay, cool. So, and then you build from there, and suddenly it's a different conversation.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And then I think just to overlay the piece around, people who have come to this country as immigrants, sometimes there's barriers to being able to participate in those civic spaces. So that might be
Absolutely.
language. A lot of our communities are really segregated on the basis of, race and other things. And so being really deliberate and intentional about making sure those are spaces that everyone can participate in is the kind of level of intention that we're trying to help communities get to.
I love that. What is on a regular basis maybe or ongoing, what are some of the big challenges that you come up against specifically in your area?
Well, I think the biggest challenge of all is that we have this form of second class citizenship in the United States that really has persisted since the beginning of U.S. history.
Yeah.
In what it means to be defined as an American and who gets to call themselves an American and who gets to, be a full American. And we've always restricted that in different ways, through slavery and Jim Crow, and now through our immigration, our approach to immigration, which, really holds back millions of people who consider themselves American, who want to be American, who already are American from accessing legal status. And I think until we really resolve that, we're not living into the fullness of our beliefs as Americans that we are all equal. Right now it's a really scary time if you have a kind of tenuous form of status. So all the Afghans that we welcomed, a few years back are still struggling to get past this kind of tenuous status that they have. A lot of new people are arriving, and it's unclear, if they're going to ever be able to be fully American. And I think that is something that we shouldn't accept. And it's hurting a lot of people, and it's hurting a lot of families, especially who are being, still torn apart because some members have status and some don't.
But I think what encourages me talking to you, who is in the thick of all of this, is that you still seem to have hope. We even, you know what I mean? It seems like even in the midst of it and knowing the things that and seeing, when you're in the middle of dealing with tackling an issue head on, you see the best and the worst of it. And to be able to talk to somebody that, I get that outside perspective. I get the news, push notifications all day and all the things, the blurbs and the sound bites. But to hear that there's still that hope is very encouraging.
Well, I think I'm able to have that hope because of what I get to see. And I think, if we maybe close the newspaper for a minute and get out into our communities, we can all see it too. We just had our annual conference a couple months ago, And it was, 800 people from all over the country and some other parts of the globe who are doing this work. And, they really represented people from all walks of life, small town cops to, advocates and people with immigrant backgrounds, people without immigrant backgrounds, but really, all rowing in the same direction. And, I think just being able to witness that and witness them fighting in their own communities for these values, how can you not have hope?
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really great. I'm assuming that what you're just saying is part of what I'm going to ask you now, but also, is there anything else of how do you deal with those times when it just kind of knocks you down, or or you're getting that burnout, or you get, nonprofit leaders in particular I talk to, and we tend to be a group of people who are pretty passionate about what we're doing, and that's why we get into what we're doing, and so we can also tend to let things affect us and a little bit more, and then burn out on find ourselves burning out and not taking care of ourselves. How do you take care of yourself and make sure that you're doing all right in the midst of all this?
Well, hats off to our founder for adopting a sabbatical policy, which I got to take advantage of earlier this year, and I hope other folks on our team will get to take advantage of too. I think sometimes we just have to stop and rest.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, I like the NAT ministry as a great example of, some of the efforts calling for just, giving our bodies a rest so that we can keep going. And I think, as nonprofit leaders, we have to honor that. If we're creating, and, this is a tension I live with every day because I have a lot of passionate people on our team who want to work hard and we're all in a way fighting against ourselves sometimes too.
Absolutely.
To keep going and just feeling the weight of the world on our shoulders. But, I think we do the work a disservice if we don't bring our best to it, and bringing our best to it is also giving our brains a chance to turn off and do other things and, be out in nature and listen to music or whatever it is that kind of rejuvenates us.
Yeah, that's great. And also I'm glad you mentioned, with staff and when, in leadership positions, making sure we're also looking out for the other people in our organizations, because it's kind of a industry. Well, it's not even an industry thing. It's a mindset thing. It's people who are passionate about a thing tend to give everything and then run out, run out of what they have to give. And sometimes we have to help look out for them because they're not equipped or trained to look out for themselves.
Yeah. And I think there's also a lot of kind of more systemic things baked into the ways that nonprofits operate or feel that we have to operate that are, only encouraging that kind of grind culture. Like, I just think sometimes, pressure from philanthropic partners, it trickles down, and like the burden is often carried by organizations, that are closest to the work and having to hold most of the risk.
Yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity to shift some of that.
And often expected to do that on a shoestring budget and, not be able to take care of things the way that they would perhaps like to. There's a lot of, we could probably go on a whole other episode just talking about nonprofit reform and things that need to happen there. But we did a screening here of that documentary Uncharitable. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really great.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I think, there's a lot. And I think this is true in so many dimensions of the work that we do at Welcoming America. So much of this is actually about culture change. How do we create a healthy culture that isn't so driven by individualism, that isn't so driven by kind of unhealthy forms of competition?
Right.
So that we can, get to a place where we really are healthy and can thrive together.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Rachel, I'm just so encouraged by you and by the work that you're doing, and especially, like I said, in the midst of all the things that we hear all day, every day, to know that you're out there, that your team's out there, that you guys are and that you're hopeful and that you're pressing forward is just encouraging, and I really appreciate your insights. I want to wrap up with a few questions that we tend to wrap up with. Is there someone in the world of nonprofits that you would most like to take to lunch?
I'm going to give a shout out to my former deputy director, Aisha Lee, who I learned so much from working with over a long period of time. And if you get a chance to take her out to lunch, I encourage you to, because she's brilliant.
Awesome. I will look her up. And what is it in your job that brings you the most joy?
My team. I love the people that I work with. I think that just makes my day every day.
That's the best. That's awesome. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for doing this. Where can people find out more about Welcoming America and the work you're doing?
Yeah, check us out at welcomingamerica.org. And if you want to feel even more hopeful, check out State of Welcoming, which will give you a picture of how the welcoming movement has grown over the last 15 years. And I hope leave you really encouraged.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate the time with you.
Creating Good with Matt Barnes is recorded at Rogue Collective in beautiful Newport Beach, California. It's hosted and executive produced by me, Matt Barnes. Post-production is by our amazing friends over at Fame, the B2B podcast agency. Writing is by Matt Barnes and Taylor Bolanos from Rogue Creatives. Creative direction and design is overseen by Corey Hill of Rogue Creatives. Theme music is composed and performed by Jared Atherton of Chapters. Huge thanks to our amazing guests for joining us this episode, and thank you to all of you incredible listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, and I would imagine you did if you're still listening, so don't forget to help us spread some good by giving us a good review. Preferably like 5 stars, lots of really nice words. It's very helpful. Also, tell your friends and subscribe so we can come straight into your potholes each and every time we have a new episode. Take the Creating Good pledge on our website at creatinggood.co. We'll catch you next time. This has been a Rogue Creatives production.